Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
All right, so we are 2 weeks and a day until Election Day. And you know what we're doing. We're keeping our eye on raw numbers. Polls are going to do what polls are going to do. There's a lot of talk about right-leaning polling coming out, flooding into the market to give a perception of momentum. I can dabble in that conversation a little bit later, and we will definitely talk about Donald Trump working at a closed McDonald's, serving only his fans. I mean, if there's nothing more emblematic of Donald Trump, it's that. And we'll dive into that conversation a little bit. I want to go to GeorgiaVotes.com again. I introduced you to that site on Friday on the show, where they give us real-time, each day, data on folks who are early voting. Friday, we were talking about how Monday, the first day of early voting, was so overwhelmingly record-breaking, et cetera, and so on. But by the end of the week, we were actually 27 percentage points behind at that point in 2020. Well, with Friday voting and with weekend voting in some counties throughout Georgia, we have closed that gap. We are now just 9 percentage points. We're just 9% off the pace. As of right now, 1,425,117 voters in the state of Georgia, registered voters, have voted. Again, that's just slightly off the pace by 9 percentage points. And the voting method breakdown has us at 80,106 mail-in ballots, and the overwhelming majority, 1,345,011 early votes in person. By gender, 55% of those who have early voted are female. That is ahead of Georgia's percentage of female residents. 53% of the state is female. 55% of female registered voters have voted. When you look at demographics, it breaks down to 58.7% of those who have voted are white. 27.6% who have early voted so far are black. 27.6% is a full 3 percentage points off of the estimated percentage of the population that is black in the state of Georgia. Is that a concern? Is there room for concern there? We will discuss that and more with editor-in-chief at the Atlanta Voice, Donnell Suggs, who will join the show in just a little bit. Looking at GeorgiaVotes.com, another corner of the website that I thought was pretty interesting, 219,047, a full 15.4% of those who have early voted so far in the 2024 cycle. 15.4% who have early voted did not vote in the 2020 general election, and more than half of that. So you could surmise more than 7.5% of those who have voted already. Probably closer to 8% of those who have voted already, early voted so far, are between the ages of 18 and 29. That's just new voters, new young voters for the most part. 51.8%. You could sit here, and I'm a numbers guy, I'm a stats guy, I'm a polling junkie. I could sit here and dive into. I look into that and say that is the new wave of younger voters stepping in to participate. That is an encouraging sign. When you break it down by congressional district, this is where Metro Atlanta needs to, I think, step up. Honestly, it feels like Metro Atlanta is actually off the pace. 4th, 5th, 6th congressional districts, as a percentage of the 2020 early vote that's come in, 4, 5, and 6, only 27% of 2020's numbers have come in. 31.5%, 32.9%, and 32.3%. And you're thinking, okay, well, that's 1 week of early voting of 3, so it should be around 33%, right? I mean, 33% would be the mark, if you ask me. But when you look at the rural and exurban congressional districts, Metro Atlanta is pacing behind. 39.1% for the first congressional, 39.3% for the second. 14th, that's Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, at a 39.8% clip. That means 39.8% of 2020's number has already been met with 2024's number so far. The 8th congressional district clipping at 40%. The 7th congressional district, 43.3%. Metro Atlanta is behind 27, 31, 32, 32. I say all that to say, I was listening to this podcast earlier, I think from Apple News this morning, where they had a couple of experts on talking, actually one expert talking to the reporter about what to read into this. And folks can make assumptions that I don't think are safe to make in this election cycle. And we don't want to fall into the 2016 trap where, oh, wow, early vote numbers look really good. And that means obviously Democratic voters are voting. Yes, we knew that. And that is a recent trend, by the way. Early voting is sort of a recent thing. And Democrats did partake in that by like a 2-to-1 margin, particularly in 2020. I think it was like 60 to 32%. But we can't assume that that is the case this time. Because in 2020, the head of the GOP ticket, Donald Trump, discouraged early voting and mail-in voting and has since pivoted to encourage early and mail-in voting because he knows that that's how he got caught with his pants down. Ooh, that's an image. He got caught by a wave of early voting, mail-in voting, absentee voting, et cetera, and so on. And he wants to make sure that his base gets out and votes no matter when, at whatever point in time, just as long as it's within a legal time frame for them to vote. And I think that if you ask me, while folks may be clapping and patting ourselves on the back about, oh, look, we're getting the early vote numbers out. Are we getting the early vote numbers out, or is the early vote number telling us that it looks as if the right has come around to where the left has been on early voting and getting their base out? I happen to think, and again, this is just looking from a geographic standpoint in the state of Georgia, it looks like the rural and exurban counties and congressional districts are outpacing Metro Atlanta, Fulton, DeKalb, Gwinnett, Cobb. It looks like the outlying part of the state is outpacing Metro Atlanta when it comes to early and absentee voting turnout so far. Joining me to discuss all this and a pretty full weekend for the vice president visiting Atlanta is Donnell Suggs, editor-in-chief at the Atlanta Voice. Donnell, I was going over GeorgiaVotes.com data, which I'm sure you've taken a look at this as well. This is a fantastic resource. I want to thank that guy again for putting this website together that just gives us the day-to-day, real-time data. I was commenting here to the audience that we're all busy glad-handing and patting ourselves on the back for early vote numbers coming out, but Metro Atlanta is trailing the rest of the state, and if I'm a Democrat, I'm concerned about that. Kamala Harris, the vice president, in town over the weekend. You were basically in lockstep following her. What is the vibe? I mean, obviously, people who turn up to the amphitheater, 18,000 or so, to support her, we know where they're going to vote, and we know that when she shows up at church yesterday, we know that the folks who attend, but where's everybody else? What are we feeling here?
Yeah, these rallies are cool and they're fun, but they're also filled with supporters.
Yeah.
So they don't mean much in the grand scheme. They really don't. I mean, I hate to say it that way to people who are excited. But then again, you still want to see that you're getting support in a battleground state. So that's why she's in Pennsylvania today. That's why she was in Atlanta over the weekend. But I mean, again, when you're on the press pool with the vice president, you're following them around, but they're going to places where they're wanted. Mm. So you do get to see a great amount of energy by her base. So I just hate to be Debbie Downer and everything. It's just that's what you get when you hold a rally. That's what you get when you go to places where you're invited.
And, this reminds me, this was my beef with the Stacey Abrams campaign in 2022. And I wasn't, the show wasn't on in 2018, but I imagine it was probably a lot of the same thing. Stacey Abrams tends to go to the safe spots where she knows she can draw a huge crowd and have a successful rally. But, does she go to Butts County? Does she go to, does she go to an exurban county? Does she dare to go to Marjorie Taylor Greene territory? Like, show me Kamala Harris going to Rome, Georgia. And she would get a turnout in Rome, Georgia. But show me Kamala Harris going to Rome, Georgia, or Albany, Georgia, or even just a rural, go to Tolliver County. And let's, that's where the votes also count. That's where they add up if you show up to let people know that their vote matters. But again, that's a conversation for another show. I'm deeply concerned about the fact that, again, looking at GeorgiaVotes.com, the percentage of the early votes that are coming in for Metro Atlanta congressional districts and counties is trailing the rural and exurban counties.
I mean, DeKalb County has some really nice numbers. So did for Clayton County, almost 30,000 people voted the first week of early voting, which is really good for Clayton County.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Dems all the way. DeKalb feels like a Dem county. Cobb was heavy, but not necessarily. And Fulton County has had a ton of votes. So they can look at it as a way of, okay, well, we're just getting started. And then some people can look at it the way you're looking at it now and say, you got to win all of Metro Atlanta. That's got to be heavy. But remember, don't forget, people love voting on Election Day, too. Mm-hmm. They really love voting on Election Day, like being part of it, or bitching about how long the lines are.
Yeah, that's true.
Because you can vote today and not deal with that at all.
And to that end, Clayton County is at a 35.7% clip, meaning they've achieved 35.7% of the numbers that they got in 2020 as far as early voting goes. So they're, I guess, a little bit ahead if you use 33.3% as the line of demarcation, because we're one of three weeks in. DeKalb County is a little off that, though. It's at 31.7%. And you said Fulton. Let me find Fulton. Fulton is 36.6%. So that's good, too. All right. Credit where credit's due. That's strong enough. I'll take that. Right. So I want to talk a little bit about all the various stops that the vice president made over the weekend, and what you heard and what the vibe on the street is on that. Going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and expound on that conversation with Donnell Suggs, editor-in-chief of the Atlanta Voice on The Ron Show, Progressive Voices Radio, and America One Radio. You can follow The Ron Show on your preferred social media platforms at Ron Show ATL, Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram, Threads. Donnell Suggs, Atlanta Voice, joining us at Suggs Writer on the Twitter X platform, by the way. A fantastic follow. Spent the weekend trailing behind the Vice President Kamala Harris as she bebopped around Metro Atlanta. Did she stop at the airport and get one of those snow globes, though? That's really what the American people want to know. No, I just kidding. So she came into town. She stayed in town. She made a couple of stops. The event at Lakewood, I remember getting invited to that. I got that in my inbox, and my initial thought was, on Saturday, does she not know that Texas and Georgia are playing and that we all have to, no way. There was no way I was going to stand in line.
Prioritize.
Right. But she still got like 18,000 people to show up for that. That's still pretty impressive.
That was as accurate as it. That number was a little heavy.
Okay.
And when I talked to the campaign, it was more like 12,000.
Okay. It's still 12,000. You couldn't get that in the Georgia State Arena.
Exactly. You wouldn't get that in Cobb Energy either. Mm-mm. So pretty cool.
All right. So obviously the vibe on the vibe at the rally and the vibe at the church are fantastic. Where else did she stop this weekend? Did she work a drive-through? Because I saw somebody else work the drive-through over the weekend.
Yeah. She didn't happen to have time to put in a shift at McDonald's, so that was unfortunate. Or any other fast food restaurant that was going to let you hang out for 3 hours before they open, or in between opening hours, and pretend that you were giving people fries. Which is weird.
I think it's fitting. I was going to talk about this later, but to me, that whole photo op is so fitting because it was Donald Trump faking working at a McDonald's that wasn't open and serving not customers. If there's anything that really sums up what Donald Trump is, it's that he's a fake. He's a fraud. He is a facade of an idea of success that never was. But he took some pictures, and it looked like he was working. That's exactly what Donald Trump is and has been all along. He had somebody ghostwrite his books, talking about success and fame and all, and he's never been successful. He's just always been what looks, I guess, or a facade of success. Anyway, we could talk about that some other point.
I just want to add this. Someone made a great point to me. They were like, "Did you realize that everyone that came up there didn't order any drinks? Who goes to McDonald's and doesn't get a drink?" I was like, you know what? I didn't think about that.
And McDonald's,
the drive-through window just kept on taking bags.
Yep. And McDonald's Coke hits different, man.
It does. And the sweet tea is you can probably run a car with that sweet tea, but no one wants a drink, huh? You're just going to take a bunch of bags and keep it out of the way. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, I thought so
Joke.
too. Nonetheless, we know what the vibe is for those who are showing up to see the vice president speak. It's the undecided voters, and there's been so much attention paid to the black male vote. I'm curious, do you sense that there's any change in enthusiasm in that demographic?
No, and I think that this narrative that is a ridiculous narrative that we've written about a number of times. I've had stories where Muslim leaders have supported her, and now I'm getting Baptist pastors supporting her. And I'm thinking, where do you think these black men are going? They're going to church with their wives and their families. I don't know this demographic. When you get two former NFL players that hang out at Trump, and they're like, well, see, there's a black man. Come on, guys. I'm on the ground at these rallies, at these campaign offices for both campaigns.
Mm.
And when you go to a Trump rally, you can physically count the black men in the audience. I don't need two hands, and I don't use toes to count the black men that are there, some of whom I know at this point now because I see them all the time. So let's stop this fake narrative. And obviously, numbers will show that later. There is no massive black support, black period, but let alone black male support for Donald Trump. It just doesn't play well in our community. So it's kind of like I get emails all the time. People say, write again about that. Write another story about that. Like, there's no such thing. I'm like, yeah, I know, but
there's not much ink being spilled about the loss of the white female vote for Donald Trump. That has come back to a 50-50 dead. I mean, that is within the margin of error now, and that used to be a 10, 11, 12-point spread for the Republican nominee.
And that's what saved his grits in 2016.
Yeah.
That white female vote, which is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't have that support now. And we're like, oh, yeah, that's cool. Well, why don't you write about that? You should write about that. I'm not writing about that. That's not my demographic. So I'm not writing about that.
So, yeah, I mean, I get, like, I get a sense of defensiveness, and I understand that. And polling seems to show, by the way, recent polling seems to show that black male support for Donald Trump is actually back down at, the numbers that we had seen before anyway. So I don't know if that means, what we've seen before was just nonsensical or, as much ado about nothing, or
black men don't even answer polls like that. So how many people are they really polling? There are not thousands of black men taking this stupid ass poll. Sorry, I apologize. I'm doing the reporting is what I'm saying. I'm doing the reporting. I'm showing people these organizations, religious organizations that have grasp on their community, and they're telling you we're supporting her. These are imams and priests and pastors, and people still go, yeah, but I saw a poll. What are you talking about? Are you in the street with people? If you were on the street with people, you would see there is no support for him. There is no support for him like that.
Donnell, I feel like you and I know each other well enough and long enough that I can have a conversation with you that might not be comfortable. So I'm going to ask you a question straight up, though. Is there any concern or is there any negativity that comes with Kamala Harris, a woman of color, being married to a white man, a Jewish white man even, within the black male subset? Is there any issue with that whatsoever?
That was a real thing when she was running for president the first time, and we and a lot of us weren't familiar with her. I remember that being a thing, like, oh man, she's married to a white guy, like she's not even, I'm like, yeah. At this point now, the whole myth of, well, people are trying to get to know who she is ridiculous. You know who she is, in particular in the black community, with her association with Howard, for one thing, with her association with her black pastor, her black church in Oakland, with just how she behaves herself and carries herself. Yes, she's married to Doug, who, by the way, was here, and we were with him on the press pool in Savannah. Oh, gosh, my days are getting all mixed up. I think it was Wednesday.
Right.
It was Wednesday. Great guy, nice guy. Does not necessarily appeal to black men or women, per se. He's just a nice guy. No one cares about that. I gotta be honest with you. That I'm talking to for stories that I'm around. It's over with. Like, all right, we get it. She married this guy. It's cool. It's not a real thing. It was originally when she first came out and was really introducing herself to a national audience. Even though she was a senator, obviously, but again, a California senator. We don't, other than every now and again you get a hearing or something, I can't name random senators from other states. I know my senators. But once she started coming out on that, guys were saying, what's up with that? But that's long since passed. That's long since passed. It's not a thing. It just isn't a thing.
You penned a piece that asks the question, do you know where your polling place is? It's late October, do you know where your polling place is? And I get the use of the quote there. Is there a real problem with folks knowing where their polling place is in Metro Atlanta right now?
What we didn't want, in particular in Fulton and DeKalb, and then I'll do another one with Clayton, is we don't want you to say, oh, on November 5th, oh, I went to this place, they wouldn't let me vote. Yeah, that's not your polling place, bro. You can't vote there then. You have a chance to do it now, so you probably should do it now and go to that your kid's school because it's already there. Don't do it on November 5th. And that's my fear. A lot of people get turned around, not millions, but a lot of people get turned around and go, well, I waited to the 5th. I got to be at work at 9. So I went at 8, and then they told me it wasn't my place. So I figured I'd do it after work. Of course, you won't in Atlanta traffic. And then you're pissed off because you didn't have a play in that. And I've heard that. I remember hearing that 4 years ago and getting so upset because, dude, 136,000 people voted on the first day of early voting in 2020. 300,000 voted in the first day of early voting this year. Everyone else knows. Why don't you know? So it kind of drives me crazy. So I figured let's go ahead and get some information out for Fulton and DeKalb in particular. Like, hey, these are places. Do you live near here? More than likely that's your place. If you make a mistake right now and go to the wrong polling place, you've got time. But don't do it on November 5th.
Call or text The Ron Show anytime at 404-919-2725. The Ron Show on America One Radio.
We're hanging out with Donnell Suggs, editor-in-chief at the Atlanta Voice, and I know you see the same reporters from a lot of other journalistic institutions here in Metro Atlanta and throughout the South and the Southeast. You are one of the go-tos. And I like your
appreciate you, brother.
No, I like your perspective because I think it's very real. I asked before we went to break, you're going to get to take a break this week. You get to, kick up your heels and stay at home, sleep in your own bed, et cetera, and so on. And you do get to do that, but there's no rest for the weary because you've still got more folks coming in this week. We've got, as you mentioned, former President Barack Obama's coming in this week. There is another Trump rally at the Cobb Energy Center, right? Are you covering these as well, or? You're going to so many of these rallies, and I notice this too because I watch a lot of them on YouTube. Like they're the same speech over and over and over again. You got to get. You could probably recite them yourself.
I can, and that's with both candidates, Let's be clear. The only difference is you don't get the vitriol from Harris or Walz that you'll get, and even Vance. Even Vance isn't nasty. He's not nasty, but he is taking a playbook from his boss. But the Trump rallies are tough. They're tough to cover because in the end, would I hang out with somebody that talks like that about any woman, white, black, Hispanic, Asian? I wouldn't. So when she's dumb and she's not fit to be anything, or she was the worstest in the world, it's like I got a wife, a 20-year-old daughter, and a mother-in-law literally in my home every day. I wouldn't. So it's hard. So we made a decision that we're not going to cover the rally on Tuesday. We're going to take it easy a little bit. I am going to cover Trump and Zebulon, and I believe that's on Wednesday. He's going to be at a church in Zebulon, and I'm going to cover that because it's a different atmosphere.
Right.
And I like to hope some of the nasty is taken down some at a church. And I did the same with VP Harris at the church she was with this weekend. I think the rallies are starting to get they're starting to be rallies.
Yeah,
and they all sound the same, dude.
You mentioned Donald Trump always having something negative or having nothing, but obviously he's running against her, so he's not going to have anything positive to say about her. But I find the quip about her being dumb to be particularly interesting.
It's hard for me.
And I understand that, I get that, but I also think it's pretty interesting because he sued to keep his college's records on him under wraps. Like we don't know. We don't know, and never mind the fact that there's a lot of question about his mental acuity right now, and he's keeping his health records under wraps as well. There's a lot we don't know about his cognitive ability right now, or let alone what it was back when he went to college. I just find that to be an interesting argument from a guy who don't talk too good to talk about somebody else not being bright.
Unbelievable sometimes, and the campaign, the Democratic campaign has touched on that a little bit. They do a lot more now than they've ever done. Where they'll say, "Did you see that last rally? How he stood there and played music? Still didn't say he was dumb. Still didn't say he was unintelligent. They said he's a danger, and that's been cooled off a little bit. They've actually come down from that some.
Yeah.
So it's like with 15 days left, I'm going to cover events where you all are putting yourselves in different environments, a la church, and not the rally where your supporters come to it. That's what you do. You get to. It's not hard to get 10,000 people when you've had 70 million votes.
Yeah.
You can get 10,000 people. They both can. They both have. So Obama's rally, that I got to do. That's just, as a black newspaper, that's a no-brainer. But I'm looking forward to seeing Trump in church, in a small church in a small town in South Georgia, and see how he behaves himself. I'm looking forward to that.
So on that, what kind of church is he going to here? Is this going to be? Is this just your
Southern Baptist?
Okay,
Southern Baptist Church. Yeah.
Again, right in his wheelhouse. I mean, listen, I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and I say right in his wheelhouse, and I also cringe when I say that because I grew up in a Southern Baptist church. I remember the lessons of Sunday school, and I remember the sermons. And that man exemplifies nothing that I ever heard coming out of a Sunday school teacher or a minister's mouth in a Southern Baptist church.
But he does have his own Bible. It's made in China, but it's still a Trump Bible. You can buy that online.
Yeah,
it's available
I get that.
Still.
So when Kamala Harris visited the church in Lithonia over the weekend, obviously, again, this is just kind of Stonecrest, right? This is kind of in a wheelhouse situation, though, right?
Totally.
Yeah, totally. I mean, she didn't go into a Southern Baptist church.
No, she didn't. She didn't go to a Catholic church.
Yeah.
She didn't go to a synagogue, for that matter. She went home, and she was treated like she was home, which was great. It's great to see her in that environment because we don't see that a lot. Of course, a lot of people don't campaign and stop in churches per se, but everyone does one or two. So it was great to see her at home, feel comfortable, not in the pantsuit. Of course, you don't wear that to church. It was very nice. Well, you can wear it to church, but she was a guest. It was good to see it. We hadn't done that yet. So I thought that was a good way for her to reach maybe there's a black male on the fence. But he loves his church.
Yeah, that's exactly what I feel like. I feel like both parties are just now deciding to go, you know what? Anybody who's undecided at this point, they're not gonna vote. They're not reachable.
Yeah.
And it's about shoring up the base.
Exactly. You have to. It's late now, man. It's 2 weeks. Two Tuesdays from now.
It is, yeah.
What you 3 Tuesdays from now? What you got? You know? Ante up.
Well, I feel like the after-election cycle is going to last longer than from 2020. We learned that the after-election cycle lasted almost as long or longer than the election cycle itself.
Yeah, no kidding. It sure did.
All right, my man. Well, listen, I appreciate your time this morning, and go enjoy the rest of your day. And you've got a little bit of a breather before Trump swoops into town. Oh, you're not covering that. So anyway.
Nope. I've got a breather. Tuesday night, I'll be watching not baseball because my team's not playing anymore.
I wasn't going to bring it up. I wasn't going to bring it up.
We had a great year.
Welcome to sit your ass downtown with the rest of us.
Amen. Because in the end, dude, if you're not playing for the title, you all sit down watching.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Donnell Suggs, the Mets fan that he is, embedded here in the city of Atlanta, editor-in-chief at the Atlanta Voice, man. Thanks for your time. I appreciate you. Have a good day.
Always thank you. Always appreciate you, brother. Anytime you need me, I'm here.
All right.
Appreciate it.
See you. Always good to have Donnell on the show. This morning, I do as I probably shouldn't do. I woke up and checked my phone, make sure I didn't have any messages that I needed to answer to right away. I don't know if you know this. I mention this occasionally. I am a residential realtor, real estate agent here in Metro Atlanta. So sometimes I wake up to things that I need to address right away that are unrelated to personal life or this show, this podcast. But I also hop on the social media feeds, make sure notifications, make sure something hasn't gone into a flame war on one of my pages, and don't have to tamp down rhetoric or dial down something. Got on Facebook and I saw a post from someone that I don't want to say I didn't expect. You know what? I'm disappointed in myself that I didn't expect it because I've known this guy for a decade or more. He's always been a super cool guy. Musician. His name is John Wesley Satterfield. Fantastic musician. He's one of those, man, just plucky, bluegrass, southern rock, country type musicians. Fantastic. If you ever get the chance to see John Wesley Satterfield in person, you should definitely do that. Anyway, I've known him from when I lived in South Carolina. That's his home base as well. And So I follow him, his social media page. I also on Facebook, and we're also connected as friends on Facebook. And I saw a post that I don't know why it surprised me. It did though. John Wesley is just a good old boy. He's a fantastic musician, white guy, looks like a truck driver. And I don't mean that in like a derogatory way. That's just like if you walk past him at a quick trip or a pilot, you would go, oh, he's heading to an 18-wheeler, because he just kind of has that look. He's just an unassuming. And listen, he's not a bad looking dude. In fact, I used to think he was like, Anyway, his post on not his personal page, but this was brave, on his musician fan account, caught my attention because I saw him posting about Ta-Nehisi Coates, and I'm like, uh-oh. You know how it is when like that white person that this is just a Southern thing when you're a Southern liberal, that white person decides to post something political and you just kind of brace for it. You're like, oh, this is going to piss me off or disappoint me or something like that. And I'm going to share it with you because I was blown away. I was literally blown away. And this is why we just can't assume based on demography or what we see or who we know that what we know is going to happen in early voting or election day is what will happen. And it encourages me as I'm going to head to South Carolina for a few days this week to work with my friend, congressional candidate Mal Hyman, South Carolina's 7th Congressional District, to get out the vote. John Wesley Satterfield on his like page wrote, a couple of weeks ago, I had the distinct pleasure of hanging out with my sister and the one and only Ta-Nehisi Coates. He's the author of several amazing books, and my badass sister, Mary Rose Wood, by the way, I'll tell you her story in just a little bit, has been dealing with some pretty brutal scrutiny and criticism for introducing one of those books into her curriculum. Between the World and Me is a letter Ta-Nehisi wrote to his son about being black in America. It is, in my opinion, this is John Wesley Satterfield writing, it is, in my opinion, beautifully written and heartbreaking at the same time. In the past few years, efforts have been made to ban the book and get my sister fired because it made some students feel, quote, ashamed to be Caucasian. That's just asinine. Anyway, ashamed to be Caucasian, as a couple anonymous emails read. It's absolutely baffling, yet completely unsurprising that this type of censorship and blatant racism still exists there. When Coates heard of my sister's predicament, he came to visit with my family and attend a school board meeting. His new book, The Message, is partially about this situation and his experiences on this trip to meet my family. It was amazing to sit down and enjoy dinner and conversation with Ta-Nehisi. He's an incredibly generous, warm, and funny person to be around. And the amazing support that my sister and family has received from teachers and activists is nothing short of incredible. I'm so proud of Mary Rose for taking a stand and joining the fight against censorship and racism in South Carolina, and for setting such a wonderful example for her students that are willing to learn. Read banned books, he writes, especially that one. Dude, I'm so blown away by this. It's not even, again, I've known John Wesley Satterfield for years, and mostly because I worked in music radio and like my boss at the stations that I worked for in South Carolina, he also owned a bar on the side, and John Wesley would come and play at the bar on occasion, and so I got to know him through that, and his hound dog. Oh, John Wesley had a beautiful hound dog, and I think he has another one now that's just as beautiful. Anyway, I just got to know John Wesley just in passing. Like, we never stopped to talk politics, because who stops to talk politics when you're just hanging out at the radio station with a guy who's a musician who's coming through town and he's going to play at your boss's and your friend's bar, and you're a pop radio DJ, and we never stopped and talked politics. And I'm not even sure that back then we'd have had a political discussion that would have led to anything in depth. It's just incredible that you learn of someone's insights in such a way that are profound. Okay, but this isn't even about John Wesley Satterfield. This is a story about, again, his sister, Mary Rose Wood. And in the state newspaper, I'll include this in the show notes at ronshowatl.com, Bristow Marchant reports, Mary Wood didn't want to provoke another controversy like the one that led to calls for her to be fired at a school board meeting last year. She was reluctant to reintroduce Ta-Nehisi Coates' memoir, Between the World and Me, to her advanced placement language arts class because her previous lesson was so controversially shut down in the spring of 2023, pulled by administrators after the writer's recounting of being black in America had at least one student feeling, quote, ashamed to be Caucasian. But despite concerns that teaching the book violated a state ban on teaching concepts related to, quote, critical race theory, and the strong reaction against it from some members of her community, the Chapin High School teacher felt that she had to try to teach the book again. It's a good book, and it didn't hurt anybody, she said in a recent interview with The State. A book can't hurt a community, even if people try to make it sound like it's something nefarious. This time, she would dot every I and cross every T. She made sure everything she did was lined up, approved, and announced ahead of time. No parent or administrator would be able to say they didn't know exactly what she was planning to do. Wood was committed to teach Between the World and Me, not only because she thought it would be valuable for her students, but because she is concerned about the future of teaching. The state's prohibition on race-related topics remains in effect, and the state recently dropped an AP African American Studies course from its curriculum. That sounds familiar. We had that happen here in Georgia for a brief minute. Under South Carolina Superintendent Ellen Weaver, elected in 2022, the Department of Education also has moved to centralize the approval of books that can be used in the classroom and potentially remove a challenged book from being used statewide. It's no lie, it's no secret that racism and inequality exist, Wood said. Why would you want to prevent the discussion, she asks. It's dangerous. Last year's controversy around Wood's lesson plan brought national and international attention to the Chapin Area School District when her lesson was stopped prematurely and copies of the book taken back after some students wrote to Lexington Richland 5 school board members complaining that the lesson made them uncomfortable. So the reporter for The State here included some of these quotes. These don't sound like students writing these, by the way, but whatever. These videos portrayed an inaccurate description of life from past centuries that she is trying to resurface. One student said, I understand in AP language, we are learning to develop an argument and have evidence to support it, yet this topic is too heavy to discuss. Another wrote, I'm pretty sure a teacher talking about systemic racism is illegal in South Carolina. If that's a concern against a teacher talking about systemic racism, that is a poor argument. Read it again. Listen to this again. I'm pretty sure a teacher talking about systemic racism is illegal in South Carolina, said one, referencing a state budget proviso that prohibited the teaching of various ideas related to race, including those broadly associated with critical race theory, an academic framework used in high-level university courses for studying how the development of laws and public policy contribute to racial inequality in popular discourse, though the term has come to be applied to most discussions of race or racism in K-12 schools. Hang tight, going to take a quick break. We'll pick up on this conversation when the Ron Show returns on America One Radio and Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Okay, final few minutes of the Ron Show for today, and I want to pick up where we were discussing the use of the book Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote, Between the World and Me. Essentially, a letter Coates wrote to his son explaining what life is like in America being black. Mary Rose Wood, a white teacher in Chapin, South Carolina, at Chapin High School, a mostly white, Christian, conservative area of South Carolina, decided to use the book in her language arts class. And last year got some backlash, as one would not be surprised, for, indoctrinating critical race theory, making kids woke, the usual rhetoric. This hit my radar, and I don't know why I didn't see it beforehand. I guess just because there's so much news to keep up with. This caught my attention when her brother, a musician who I know from my time in South Carolina, who I would never in a million years have guessed was woke, doesn't look woke. He's just one of those good old boy types. He plays really good Southern rock, country music, and he was so proud of his sister and got to meet Ta-Nehisi Coates with her and the family in recent days as he's out promoting his new book, which chronicles this fight in South Carolina to use the book in school. Back to the State article that Bristow Marchant wrote. The point of the class is to prepare students who will soon be headed to college for how to engage with new and different perspectives and beliefs they don't necessarily agree with. But Wood, the teacher, said she felt the classroom discussion wasn't able to do that if she felt she couldn't share those differing perspectives. Exactly. I would have been more bold, she said, but when her lesson plan received so much pushback from people who not only disagreed with it, but also believed she's fundamentally biased, was breaking the law and should lose her job, quote, you can start to doubt yourself and it seeps into your life, she said. That is a teacher saying that. You don't want teachers with doubts teaching your kids at this level. Back to the article. Coming into this school year and her second shot at the lesson on the Coates book, Wood wasn't sure what the students in her class had heard about her at home or on social media before they came to class. One day, a teary-eyed student came to her concerned that, quote, "You're about to be fired." Another said he was told that, quote, "You're a racist for wanting to teach Coates' book and that the author hates white people." I don't think they know what racism is, Mary Wood said. None of her students mentioned it, but Wood said she thinks it's unlikely they didn't know about the controversy that erupted over the same book last summer. The author even paid a visit to Wood and sat on a school board meeting where members of the public spoke in support of Wood's teaching, although he didn't speak himself. Coates, as the article points out from earlier this summer, is writing about the Lexington-Richland 5 controversy in his new book, The Message, publishing this fall. Among other reporting trips for the book, he takes readers along with him to Columbia, South Carolina, where he reports on his own book's banning, but also explores the larger backlash to the nation's recent reckoning with history and the deeply rooted American mythology so visible in that city, a capital of the Confederacy with statues of segregationists booming over its public squares, according to a blurb from the publisher Penguin Random House. Oh, and get this twist. One source of encouragement for Wood was the presence of her 16-year-old son, Summit, in her class this semester, something that she thought helped the classroom discussion. It brought an element of humanity to me, she said. I wasn't just a teacher, I'm Summit's mom, so it established a more human connection. They could see me as more of a person. The reason she wanted to teach Coates' book, she said, was the same as the purpose of the AP course itself, to teach students how to critically engage with and respond to other people's perspectives they may be unfamiliar with, even when they disagree with them. She said, if you look at Chapin, it's conservative, Christian, wealthy, and the world is bigger than that. Instead of being taught how to engage with those outside perspectives, she fears students will learn the correct reaction to them is to shut down the discourse in those relationships within the classroom. To add to that, I want to share with you a TikTok from content creator here in Atlanta, Brian Bays, who showed this from Fox and Friends.
Y'all, this is one of the most egregious fucking exchanges I have ever seen in my life.
We're going to take the Department of Education, close it. I'm going to close it. We'll have one person, could be you if you decide to retire.
Okay, Mr. President, here's what bothers me.
Central casting.
Here's what bothers me about that. So let's say you have a liberal city, let's Los Angeles, San Diego, and they just decide we're going to get rid of that history. We got new history. This is America built off the backs of slaves on stolen land. And that curriculum comes in.
Then we don't send them money. We would save half of our budget.
I mean, again, aside from the fact that Trump consistently says he knows nothing about Project 2025, even after 140 people who used to work for him are involved in creating Project 2025, closing the Department of Education is literally something that's a part of Project 2025. Even aside from that, Trump is pointing to this guy who's a Fox News host who knows nothing about education, and he's like, well, you could do the job. Trump wasn't joking. We've seen how his nepotism has worked in the past with creating positions for his literal kids. Just because Elon Musk endorsed him and gave him some money, he's going to potentially create a new position for him in the presidency if he wins. The second most egregious part of the video is this other Fox News host who asks, well, here's the problem that I have with that. What if they start teaching that America was built on the back of slaves on stolen land, which is the truth of how this country was fucking made? And Trump just closes out with the bow and says, then we just won't send them any money. If you try to teach students the truth of what happened in this country, we will defund you. How the can you still be undecided?
It's a question I ask all the time, honestly. All right. I want to thank Donnell Suggs from the Atlanta Voice for joining me for a conversation earlier in the show, as well as John Wesley Satterfield for surprising me and encouraging me. So yeah, I'm going to be hitting the road for the next couple of days. I will do a show tomorrow from here before I hit the road, and then hopefully give you a couple of shows from South Carolina while I'm over there. I'm taking the equipment with me. Show must go on. We still got 2 weeks of election cycle here to pace ourselves through. Show will replay 5 to 6 p.m. on America One Radio, 11 p.m. to midnight at Progressive Voices via TuneIn and wherever you podcast. And show notes are always available at RonShowATL.com. Have a great day.